In 2009, the block reward for mining was 50 bitcoins. Back then, Bitcoin was practically worthless, and many miners gave up because the combined cost of the mining computer and the electricity required to power it weren't worth the effort or money. My favourite story is from a book called The Truth About Crypto, where the author recounts a time when an MIT graduate and his mates spent an entire weekend mining 250 bitcoins. By Sunday evening, they were exhausted. We just spent 2 days and nights wasting our time collecting this worthless nothing. We're all just wasting our time. So they quit and shut down their computers. No more files, no more access, no more Bitcoin. He told the author, if we'd continue, today we'd be billionaires. What a shame for these people and so many others who gave up on Bitcoin in the early days. The block reward for mining stayed around 50 bitcoins until the year 2012, when the block reward was halved to 25 bitcoins. Miners would only receive 25 bitcoins for mining instead of 50 bitcoins. 4 years later, in 2016, the block reward was again halved to 12.5 bitcoins, and then again in 2020 to 6.25 bitcoins. In 2024, the block reward for mining once again halved to 3.125 bitcoins. These halving events are no coincidence. In fact, Satoshi Nakamoto programmed the Bitcoin blockchain to function in this way. The block reward will halve again in 2028 and again, roughly every 4 years or every 210,000 blocks until the very last Bitcoin is mined in the year 2140. The official name for this event is called a Bitcoin halving. Bitcoin halvings are an essential function of the Bitcoin blockchain. Why? Well, now is a good time to remind you that only 21 million Bitcoins will ever exist. And do you ever notice that the less of something there is, the more we want it? We can apply the same logic and rationale to Bitcoin. The less Bitcoin there is, the more we want it, and that is reflected in Bitcoin's extraordinary price action over the years. Like gold, Bitcoin is a scarce asset with certain desirable properties. You might think a Bitcoin halving event would deter miners from continuing because the incentive to mine Bitcoin is effectively chopped in half. If Bitcoin halvings did in reality deter miners, this would be problematic because, as we now know, users need miners to keep the Bitcoin blockchain alive. So there's one thing that must happen for miners to continue seeing value in mining Bitcoin, and that is the price of Bitcoin must increase. And it has. Historically, every Bitcoin halving event has caused a huge spike in Bitcoin's price, which is a major reason why people continue to be so bullish on Bitcoin. Let's break it down. The original block reward for mining was 50 bitcoins. Bitcoin went from being worthless to jumping to 9 cents in July in 2010 and then jumping again to $29.60 in June 2011. The first halving event occurred in November 2012 and the block reward was 25 bitcoins. The price of Bitcoin at halving had settled back down to $12 and then skyrocketed to $1,217 one short year later. The second halving event occurred in July 2016 and the block reward was 12.5 bitcoins. The price of Bitcoin at halving had again settled back down to $647 and 18 months later increased to a staggering $19,800. The third and most recent halving event occurred in May 2020 and the block reward was halved to 6.25 bitcoins once again. The price of Bitcoin at halving had once again settled down to $3,276 and less than 1 year later increased to $64,507. If you mine Bitcoin for a block reward of 6.25 Bitcoins and each Bitcoin is worth $64,500 that's a block reward of $400,000. That's some incredible price action from an asset that many critics deem worthless. To put it into perspective, the CEO of Compound Capital Advisors, Charlie Bilello, examined the returns of the 17 best performing assets since 2011 and found that Bitcoin smashed the competition with a price increase of 20 million %. Far behind in second place was the US Nasdaq 100 with a total price increase of 541%. Stocks and Bitcoin are fundamentally different assets, however, Bitcoin's extraordinary price action is undeniable. Earlier in your journey, we spoke about how fiat currency is inflationary. The government can inflate fiat currency by printing more of it, and this is bad because it reduces your purchasing power over time and makes life less affordable for you. For example, if you put $20 under your mattress in 2005 and retrieved it 15 years later in 2020, it's still $20, but it would buy you much less in the 2020 economy. It's why you might also hear people say that you are losing money if you keep it in a bank account where it won't grow in value over time. If the government prints too much fiat currency, it can lead to inflation and hyperinflation. Bitcoin, on the other hand, is not an inflationary asset. There's absolutely no way to print or mine Bitcoin past the set amount because the Bitcoin blockchain was programmed so that only 21 million Bitcoins can be mined into existence. Each time the block reward for mining Bitcoin halves, it's a reminder to everyone that Bitcoin is not an inflationary asset, and the number of Bitcoins that are released into circulation through the mining process decreases over time. This special property about Bitcoin is viewed by economists with mixed feelings because, on one hand, Bitcoin's scarcity is the very thing that drives its value up and up. You might buy Bitcoin and think, great, I won't spend it now, I'll wait for it to increase in value and maybe spend it then. Some economists argue this mentality might result in people hoarding Bitcoin instead of spending it, as was originally intended by Satoshi Nakamoto. The Bitcoin white paper literally describes the Bitcoin blockchain as an electronic payment system that facilitates payments in Bitcoin cryptocurrency. Although Bitcoin is currently treated as both a long-term investment asset and a means to buy goods and services, the jury is still out as to how people will treat Bitcoin into the future. Only time will tell. Right now, one thing is certain. The Bitcoin blockchain needs miners and users to stay alive and open for business. One cannot exist without the other. We need miners to validate our Bitcoin transactions and release more Bitcoin into circulation, and we need users to buy and sell Bitcoin. But what happens when all 21 million Bitcoins are mined into existence? What will become of the miners then? Satoshi Nakamoto commented, "Total circulation will be 21 million coins. It'll be distributed to network nodes when they make blocks, with the amount cut in half every 4 years. The first 4 years, 10,500,000 coins. The next 4 years, 5,250,000 coins. Next 4 years, and so forth. When that runs out, the system can support transaction fees if needed. It's based on market competition, and there will probably always be nodes willing to process transactions for free." Interesting. The system can support transaction fees, or what we call gas, if needed, and even then, there might be nodes willing to sustain the Bitcoin blockchain for free. Let's see how that pans out in the year 2140, when it's predicted the last Bitcoin will be mined into existence. That's the end of today's lesson on Bitcoin halving events. If you have any questions about Bitcoin halvings, head over to the Dear Crypto Discord and ask in one of the channels or during one of the next live AMAs held each Monday evening. In tomorrow's lesson, we're going to summarize all that we've learned about Bitcoin in the last few lessons with one simple but impactful quote. See you then.